Vidcomon, bienvenue. Welcome to another property quorum. It would be if I could click on the button. Oh dear, it's amazing. You think yourself, you got yourself all your ducks in a row and it all falls to poo. I tell you what, good morning. Welcome on bienvenue, one and all, to another property quorum. Of course, joined with me are my compatriots, Hamish McLay of Search Convey, Chris Gilsenan of Root Home, and of course, the fabulous Juliet Baboolal of gunnercooke. And together we try and wrestle with questions that some people fear to ask about the property industry, the whys and wherefores. And today is no exception. We are talking today about and admitting that things can actually go wrong. Would you believe it? And today we're going to talk about what can go wrong and perhaps even how to mitigate some of that. But we also have, as per usual, a special guest. I'll bring him to the stage. Robert Darrow of Zephyr Complete. In fact, what I'm going to do is immediately, without further ado, throw you completely under the bus, Robert, and ask, what does Zephyr Complete do?
Hi, so Zephyr Complete work for developers, bulk purchase investors, and high net worth individuals. We support them through the property process, help them move into their new homes, and solve their problems after they've moved in. So we're like concierge for apartment buyers in central London.
Wonderful. And we had a special guest last week, a gentleman who builds the very same properties I guess you are helping people move into.
Absolutely, Mr. Rixman. Yes.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. We all loved that. That was great fun. So I'm going to carry on with today's theme. What can go wrong, Robert? I'll give you a wide field.
A wide field. I guess lots of different things. There's so many different people involved in property transactions and investment ownership. I think where things tend to go wrong is because most people own a home. They think buying residential or investing in residential is pretty understandable because they've maybe got some bricks and mortar themselves. And whereas if they were buying a prison or developing a prison or a hospital, they'd call in expertise. But because it's a home, I think people feel more emotionally connected to it. And maybe therefore, I guess where problems start is people don't pay and invest the right money for the right consultants at the right time.
I have to say, this is an old story, Chris. We were always talking about the fact that if you don't pay the right people to get on board and help you make things work, then you could end up mopping up afterwards, right?
The thing is, problems are going to occur all the way through the process. We've been dealing with some fallout this week, where we failed to communicate that we wanted a vacant possession on a property. So that's been toing and froing through the legal process.
Did you rock up and you find that it was actually
It didn't get that far. It didn't get that far. No, we've done negotiated an exchange with delayed completion. But it's you know that if you go into the process knowing that there are going to be challenges all the way through, and then you can get your mindset right to accommodating that when things go wrong, that you can shift to providing a solution or shift to thinking towards solutions rather than just throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Does happen a lot, it seems. Juliet, surely with the best laid plans of people like yourself at the helm, things can't possibly go wrong, can they?
Do you know what? I sort of bank on it almost going wrong. No two deals are ever the same, but it depends on what going wrong means for you, because if you've got the right expertise, as we've said, you can get on the right path, or you might just recalibrate and choose to do something else. For example, if it's a development and you've said, look, this is what I want to build, you've worked with your architect, you've applied for planning, and somehow the planning was rejected, you will need to recalibrate and reapply, perhaps with, you know, an alternative objective on the planning. So the reality is it really depends on what the problem is, you know, and if you've got the right people who can guide you through those problems, that's fine. I think one of the things Robert said is often people buy property. So you buy a house and it's, you know, yeah, it was smooth sailing. So you expect the process to be the same going forward and other things, and it's not. And you've got to wear that cap knowing, look, no two deals are ever going to be the same. The way that, you know, you've got people on the other side. So you've got a seller. The way a seller might view something on one deal, another might give you a really, really hard time. So your vacant possession issue, Chris. Another person might say, okay, it's really easy. We can get you vacant possession. We can get the tenants out, no problem. Another person might say, well, we didn't bargain for that. So we need compensation. You need to pay us for it. So you've got to have the right mindset insofar as, look, what's the objective? What's the solution? What's the end goal here? And how do I get there, irrespective of the problem that's presented to me? And those problems can be different on every deal.
So I guess it's all about a form of teamwork, isn't it? When you've got to realize that every part of this deal, of getting the property over, getting you over the threshold, it's all about teamwork, making the dream work, as they say. But Hamish, aren't we just trying to fail forward?
No, not really. I think if we have a strange enough mind, strange things come to mind. Something which hit me earlier on, which was beyond probably other mortals. Let's dip their toes here.
I'm already tipping my hat to you with it.
A guy called Baden-Powell, was it 1908 or something, when he got the old scout thing off the ground.
Good old Baden-Powell, yes.
Which were based on the initials from his name, Baden-Powell, and it was be prepared. Now, how you prepare your mind can work in sort of several different ways. You can have significant knowledge, or you can actually be prepared in that you have the people around you who have adequate knowledge.
Yes.
And both of those will work. I prefer, being of simple mind, to have those about me who have the knowledge.
So Robert, tell me this. In your machinations that you're constantly working with people, do you find that people haven't prepared, that they've left it to chance? Or no, are they truly like Hamish and Juliet have already said, try to get the right people around them to ensure that they are prepared?
I think a little bit of both. Obviously, it depends on the scale of deal and the expertise. We find that occasional residential developers are often more challenging because they may be expert in commercial office or healthcare or life science, and somehow have ended up with a mixed-use investment or a straight resi development or a Section 106. And maybe they don't have the expertise in-house for residential, but they do have a lot of development experience. And sometimes that just needs a supplement to their team, a quick intervention, and that's the sort of thing we can offer through our development management services. Other people, I think, don't dive into the detail enough, and the devil is in the detail, particularly on residential deals. You're dealing with 50, 100 people's individual purchasers, whether that be investment or pied-à-terre or owner-occupier. And that's a lot of stakeholders, a lot of transactions, and a lot of individual back and forward, as I'm sure Juliet will experience. And with those buyers, not every buyer will respond to the same clause in a sales lease in the same way. So everything's nuanced. I think, being prepared is really important. But if you don't know what you're trying to prepare for, then how can you prepare?
But it's not all bad news, is it, Hamish?
Well, absolutely not. The way, to me, I think we just need to add it because it's absolutely great, because I know it's one of Juliet's favourite sayings as well. The devil, in fact, even Chris has said this, the devil's in the detail. And this is why, as Juliet so rightly explains as well, each of our transactions is so different. We don't get an identical situation. So we have an expectation, and it's absolutely great to be like that, to actually expect certain things because they're going to be obvious. However, expect that there are going to be things that are different. We don't have quite such the same challenge quite as often in terms of the work that we do in contributing towards conveyancing, because we know the basis, and whatever a council does, whatever a council changes, whatever the land registry changes, there was an original basis, so we can always go back to that. We perhaps need to figure out, and this is where the creativity comes in. Now they've stuck another roadblock there. What's the best way around that? But we can do that more readily than I think looking at that great detail that comes on when you have a different type of thing, when the expectation of you may have sort of 25 flats that that are going forward, but there's 25 different people wanted to get those flats for 25 different reasons. So it's those differences, but that is contained within the detail. And that's where the type of person like sort of all our experts today are all doing exactly the same thing. They find out what their clients need and they support that client's needs by actually listening to their clients.
Juliet, do you find that your clients are listening to you when you advise them clearly enough, or do you often have to mop up afterwards? And is it, as they say, the devil is obviously in the detail, but is it because perhaps they don't go in depth far enough?
So I act for lenders, and I act for very experienced lenders. So it's quite refreshing in that they understand the deals, they listen. We do a lot of risk analysis. So what you have with my clients per se, and say someone who's not as experienced, is that comparison of what can happen when you're less experienced. And identifying issues is really important. As Robert says, if you don't know what the issue is, how can you identify it? And if you go to someone who, say, for example, you've decided to chinks on the legal process. I had a matter the other day. Someone went to one of those conveyor belt type firms. They hit a block road, and there was nothing. There was no sort of proactivity, nobody doing anything, nobody hand-holding and saying, this is what you do next. When you go to a practitioner, whether it's a legal practitioner, a developer, an architect who's seen it before, they steer you right. And although the fees up front may seem, astronomical or not as sort of economically great as another firm, you will benefit in the long run, because when you hit those brick walls and you actually need guidance, that's what you're paying for in terms of the expertise. And the reality is, if done well, you yourself will eventually become an expert. You spot things and say, well, actually, the last time I did this, this is what we did, this is what you apply, and this is how you work through. So, it's really key to understand that getting the right expert for your job makes the world of difference, insofar as steering right and getting to the end goal.
Chris, thoughts?
Knowing who to turn to is paramount. So there's a pithy expression: your net worth is your network, or your network is your net worth. I can't remember which way around, but
it works both ways for me.
It rhymes very true. So I wasn't even aware of the firms like what Robert does even existed, but it's just absolutely revelationary. And having those contacts and people to know who to call in your phone book is of huge value when you do hit those problems. It's very, very important that you know where to turn and how to solve a problem.
I mean, we've talked about your past and how you got to where you got to now, and I would say your past is a study in exactly that. You've kind of built up not just knowledge of your topic, but also all the people who are best there to support you, right?
Yeah, the peers that I have around me are best of class. So if I hit problems now compared to this, taking those problems back 15 plus years ago, yeah, I'm very well positioned now to be able to handle any obstacle. There's a great book called "The Obstacle Is the Way." Yeah, have a look for it. But yeah, it tells you that you are going to hit challenges as you move forward through life, not just through business. But yeah, it's the way to approach them. Any obstacle is to accept it and go through it and find a way through.
Hamish, before we wrap this thing up, I think the whole essence of what today's mission was to acknowledge the fact that there are problems, but also to say, don't worry, there are ways through if you surround yourself with the right people. Do you have any last thoughts for us before I pull this all together?
Well, I can simplify it. So when I established my business in the very early noughties, I established it with the name Search Solutions because we were actually sort of focusing purely on the local authority searches. That's really what got us off the ground. And the reason we called it Search Solutions was because there was a solution. We might not necessarily know it yet.
Right.
However, there was a solution. And as time has evolved, like Chris has intimated and Juliet's forever said, as we go through the experiences, we find the appropriate peer in the appropriate sort of area that we don't have the sufficient knowledge about. And I always go to back to the Henry Ford example as well. He believed that he didn't need to know anything outside of what his manufacturing processes were. He just made sure he had people about him that did know. And I'm very, very much like that. Fortunately, I know a tremendous amount now about searches and resolving issues sort of there. And nothing outside of that, well, I've got a bunch of experts in front of me to pull on board if there's a client that needs that expertise.
So it just remains for me to thank everyone here. Hamish, as ever, Chris, Gilsenan, of course, Robert, Darrow, thank you very much for being in attendance, Juliet Baboolal, and myself, Gareth Wax of the Many Purple Hats. I just wanted to say that we are here every Thursday. Our whole role is to try and bring to light some of the stuff that really people don't talk about within property, perhaps with a nod and a wink, but usually to provide good news at the end of it. Do try and attend if you possibly can. And until next time, please remember this is Property Quorum, and our role is to try and help rather than advise, and maybe give you some ideas and inspire some further conversation. Thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next go. Bye-bye now.